You think you know who she is until she spoke Dutch to a billionaire. Grand Plaza Hotel, 7:46 a.m. The five-star lobby smelled of polished wood and imported French floor cleaner. Zoe had just wiped away a faint shoe mark on the marble tile when the silence was broken not by a hotel phone, but by her own. She froze, her fingers clenched around the mop handle. Rule number 1. Never answer personal calls during your shift. But the screen lit up. An international number. Amsterdam. She looked around. The guests were still scarce. Her coworkers were busy near the elevator. Zoe slipped behind one of the marble columns. "Zoe Johnson," she whispered, barely audible. The voice on the other end responded in a language almost no one here would recognize. "Mevrouw Johnson. Dit is Professor van Houten van de Universiteit van Amsterdam." Dutch flowed from her lips naturally, fluently, like she was born in Rotterdam. She answered the questions, mentioned her motivation letter, her application status, her interview slot. In that glistening lobby, her voice felt like a foreign wind brushing against a desert of assumptions. And then she noticed something. The silence wasn't just around her, it was watching her. As she hung up, Zoe felt it. Not just the usual glances from coworkers. This time, it was a gaze that cut through everything from none other than Richard Coleman, billionaire founder of the Grand Plaza Hotel Group, standing just a few feet away. Beside him, Sarah Richards, head of housekeeping. Her face was steel. One man stunned, one woman seething. "Johnson, my office, now." Richards' voice sliced the air. Zoe took a deep breath. No one was smiling anymore. The basement office was dim, forgotten. A space no sunlight reached. A desk, a few disciplinary forms, one plastic chair. "What do you think this is, language school?" Richard slammed her hand on the table. No phones on shift, especially not in the lobby. And what was that gibberish? French? Zoe answered, calmly, not defiant, just factual. "Dutch." The air turned ice cold. Richards leaned back, arms crossed, staring at Zoe like she was an insect that had dared to speak. "Smart girl, huh? But don't think smart gets you anywhere here. You're on bathroom duty. Convention center. 3 months. Graveyard shift. No overtime. No complaints. Got it?" Zoe nodded, but she didn't bow in surrender. She bowed to hide the rage, the silent scream in her chest clawing for breath. That night, Zoe returned to the tiny apartment she shared with 2 immigrant nurses. 15 square meters. Peeling paint. The scent of old food and fading dreams. She kicked off her shoes, removed her gloves, and sat facing the wall where her degree hung. Bachelor of Arts in Linguistics, Georgetown University, magna cum laude. Next to it, certificates in Dutch, Mandarin, Italian, French, Spanish, and a folder of job applications, 47 of them unanswered. 12 internal transfer requests quietly denied. Every time she made it to an interview, they looked at her with that same half-smile. "Oh, you have a degree? We thought you were fine where you are." That night, Zoe didn't cry because of injustice. She cried because of a bitter thought that slipped through her defenses. Maybe Mom was right. Maybe skin color and job titles come with invisible ceilings. The next morning, Zoe still showed up on time. Same uniform. Same care in her work, like someone who studied language the way others study anatomy. She watched white coworkers at the front desk texting and making personal calls. No one cared. But when she spoke a foreign language, everything stopped. Because for women like her, silence was acceptable. Sound was not. She was reassigned to the convention center, the harshest zone in the hotel. 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. No overtime. No benefits. There, she noticed the invitation cards riddled with typos. Signs mistranslated. Mandarin brochures that read like Google Translate disasters. She had sent feedback emails before. No replies. That night, after scrubbing the VIP restroom, she quietly took pictures of the errors. and sent them to herself. Not out of rebellion but remembrance. If no one values your voice, then the least you can do is not forget it yourself. The next morning, Zoe was cleaning near the service elevator when a voice rang out from the front desk. Zoe Johnson, R wants to see you top floor. No one called cleaning staff to floor 32. That was where the CEO's office lived. Legal, strategy, real decisions. She looked at the elevator panel she had polished for 6 years. Today, it glowed differently. She stood among perfectly pressed suits and expensive cologne. No one asked what she was doing there. Not because they were curious, but because they still didn't see her. Zoe stopped in front of the frosted glass door. The logo, Grand Plaza International. Her heart pounded, not from fear of being fired, but from the sense that something was shifting, not just inside her, but inside the system. She inhaled, knocked. A voice from inside, calm, deliberate. Miss Zoe Johnson, please come in. Zoe had never stepped onto the 33rd floor. After 6 years of scrubbing the Grand Plaza's grand lobby, she knew every hallway, every emergency exit, even which elevator sensor was slightly delayed. But the 33rd floor, where the executive offices lived, was sacred ground. She had only ever cleaned its nameplate, never crossed it. Today, she wasn't holding a mop. Today, she wasn't there to disappear. Today, the elevator carried her up like someone surfacing after years underground. The door opened. No receptionist. No music. Just one man behind a walnut desk. No expression. No smile. Richard Coleman. Light from the tall windows cast sharp shadows across his face. Cold, but not empty. Zoe entered. He didn't just look at her, he was scanning the full narrative HR had tried to bury. Miss Zoe Johnson, he said, not accusatory, not indulgent. Please sit. The office was larger than the apartment she shared with 2 others. Oak floors, diplomatic maps on the walls, and one black folder open on the desk. Dutch, French, Italian, Mandarin, correct? Yes. Georgetown magna cum laude. 47 job applications. 12 internal transfer requests. No response. That's also correct. Zoe sat upright. Her hands rested on her knees, but the color was already fading from her knuckles. The silence stretched. Coleman turned a page. Zoe took a breath. She knew this could be a trap. A humiliation, gift-wrapped. Maybe even a golden way to say, "You're fired." "I heard you speak Dutch yesterday," he said without looking at her. "I asked HR to send me your full file immediately. I hired a private firm 3 months ago to investigate internal bias. You were the one result I never saw coming." Zoe's brow tightened. "No one in this system noticed you. But you appeared in multiple guest reports as the cleaning lady who spoke like a diplomat. Do you know why I called you in?" Zoe shook her head. This time, Coleman looked directly at her. "Because I have a high-stakes international summit starting tomorrow. Dutch and Chinese delegates. I need someone who speaks both fluently. Not just the language, the nuance. And the most qualified person I found is the woman who's been mopping our floors for 6 years without anyone ever seeing her." Zoe felt the floor shift beneath her. Her heart slowed. Not out of calm but self-preservation. Temporary title, International Relations Coordinator. Full access to conference files. Pay $5,000 a week. Her eyes widened but her posture held steady. She said nothing. Analyzing. Reading subtext. A trap? A pivot point? Can you trust a man who allowed this system to run unchecked for years? She looked into Coleman's eyes. No pity. No performative allyship. Just the look of a strategist who had found his unexpected trump card. "Why me?" she finally asked. Coleman folded his hands. "Because you're the only one good enough to make me ask. Why is she even on the cleaning staff? And because I believe something is deeply wrong in my company, and you're the living proof. Zoe stood up, nodded. I'll do it. But I won't be your proof. I want to be the one who clears the path. Coleman gave a brief smile. Then I believe we understand each other. On her way out, Zoe didn't take the elevator down. She stood quietly on the balcony of the 33rd floor, looking down at the hotel lobby. Just yesterday, she was a shadow pushing a mop. Today, she carried the resume no one had bothered to read for 6 years. And what made her smile was that it still smelled faintly of floor cleaner. The elevator stopped at the 25th floor. The doors opened. Zoe stepped out, no longer invisible. Pinned to her chest was a new badge, deep blue with a silver border, engraved clearly, International Relations Coordinator. Appointed directly by CEO Richard Coleman. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something more dangerous than discrimination, attention. The hallway went silent as she walked through. Admin staff, receptionists, sales associates, all paused mid-conversation. Some pretended to type. Others stared at her badge. Then, Sarah Richards stepped out of the opposite elevator. She froze like she'd just walked into a glass wall. Zoe, what are you doing here? Weren't you assigned to the convention center? Zoe remained calm. No raised voice. No posture shift. Just a hand resting on her badge. Temporary reassignment to international relations. Dutch-Chinese summit. Per Mr. Coleman's request. A silence heavy enough to hum. Richard's eyes shifted surprise, defensiveness, anger, restraint. Then a crooked smile. Ah, so one lucky phone call got you a promotion? Zoe said nothing. But her gaze had changed. No longer the look of a cleaner obeying orders. Now, the look of someone who just reclaimed the pen that once wrote other people's titles. At HR, Zoe attempted to access the internal systems. The software denied her login. Your account hasn't been upgraded yet, said the HR clerk coldly. It probably didn't receive formal clearance. Zoe handed over the signed memo from Coleman. The clerk glanced, nodded curtly. We'll need further verification. That afternoon, Zoe ate lunch in the management lounge for the first time. She chose a window seat. No one joined her. Across the room, a group whispered. One of them was a receptionist Zoe used to mop around each morning. Heard she didn't even pass the interview round. Must be a PR stunt. Whitmore said Coleman's under pressure. You know all that diversity stuff. Back in her inbox, a new email appeared. Subject: Urgent Translation Update. Conference Notice. It was a revised schedule for the summit. Deadline for edits: noon today. Zoe frowned. No one had told her about a deadline change. She called the translation department. No answer. 30 minutes later, during the pre-summit technical briefing, a Chinese delegate spoke up. We received a new version of the translation. Some phrases are questionable, a bit sarcastic even. All eyes turned to Zoe. From across the room, Whitmore raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to flinch. But Zoe calmly opened both documents. The official version and the one sent from the fake email. She looked up, voice steady. This isn't my submission. The edit deadline was manually altered. I'll send a corrected version within the hour with CEO approval. The delegate nodded. Zoe didn't miss the message behind the mix-up. Someone was trying to sabotage her. On her way back, Zoe got a message from Coleman. Everything all right? They've started pushing back, she replied. Good, he texted. That means you're headed in the right direction. That night, back in her small rental with the water-stained walls and flickering sockets, Zoe hung her new badge next to the mirror. No frame, no spotlight. Just a rusty nail on the same board where she once pinned job notices. Above it hung a faded piece of paper, handwritten long ago. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Martin Luther King, Jr. She didn't remember who had put it there. Maybe a past tenant. maybe herself on a night too heavy to recall. But for the first time, it wasn't a quote for survival. It was a call to action. She looked at the words and whispered, as if translating them into a language only the once invisible understand. If injustice travels quietly, then justice must begin with a whisper. Over 200 international guests arrived at Grand Plaza. Delegates from China, the Netherlands, Singapore, Belgium. Zoe was up by 4:30 a.m. No blazer, no heavy makeup. She reached the conference room before everyone, except the night security guard, half asleep at the monitors. The welcome packets were waiting. Schedules, bios, nameplates, and everything was wrong. The Dutch banner confused Rotterdam officials with a company from Utrecht. The Mandarin greeting said Gopi Hudon, literally, bullshit contract. The Chinese delegates' guides were in Japanese. Zoe sat, opened her laptop, one file at a time. Correction, reformat, restore. No yelling, no panic. Just the silence of a surgeon removing shrapnel from the company's core. 8:15 a.m. Coleman walked in. Found Zoe alone, fingers red from typing, eyes ringed with exhaustion. "What are you doing?" he asked, no anger in his tone. Zoe held up the butchered translation. "If this sentence goes through, we'll be a joke. This Mandarin phrase is insulting in corporate culture. Someone clearly used Google Translate, recklessly." Coleman stayed quiet. "Whitmore claimed he hired top translators," he said. "Cost us nearly $50,000. Zoe pulled up a file. "Ashley Whitmore, no certified degree from Beijing Language University. I confirmed that this morning. They've never heard of her." Coleman sat down. For the first time, a CEO listened, while a former cleaner walked him through every typo his empire had ignored. "How do you know all this?" he asked. Zoe didn't look up. "Because I didn't study language to decorate my resume. I studied it because it was the only way I could survive a system that never listened to me in my native tongue." 11 a.m. The summit launched. Zoe moved effortlessly among the guests, gliding from Mandarin to Dutch, bridging cultures with grace. Her Dutch was fluid, but softened with poetic Belgian rhythm. Her Mandarin was precise, neutral, no trace of regional slang. During the break, Whitmore approached. His politeness felt performative. "Miss Johnson, impressive. Seems Richards underestimated you." Zoe smiled. "And you clearly underestimated the 47 emails I sent over 6 years, especially the ones pointing out your translation mistakes." Whitmore froze, smile intact, but eyes flat. "Must be some misunderstanding. Number, I have read receipts. Timestamps. Attachments including the warning about the contract draft that nearly cost us the Hanoi deal." After the session, a Chinese delegate approached Zoe. "We're looking for a language consultant for our Shanghai office. The way you handled this morning's issue, very professional." Zoe accepted the card. For the first time, not because she cleaned up someone else's mess, but because she prevented one. That night, she received another email from legal. "Dear Miss Johnson, please confirm that you are the sole authorized reviewer for Summit materials. Our system doesn't yet reflect formal CEO designation." Zoe didn't reply right away. She knew the game wasn't over. Someone, or more than one, was still trying to trap her. With procedures, with loopholes, with access delays. But now, they weren't dealing with a janitor who knew a few languages. They were up against someone who had lived in language long enough to master the rules behind every mask. Zoe was on the 14th floor in one of HR's side conference rooms, submitting the official acknowledgement of her temporary role as requested by legal. She had just stepped out when she heard a voice behind her. "Miss Zoe?" A young woman with neatly tied curls and a soft gray blouse approached. Her name tag read, "Zoe Williams, HR Analyst." "Funny coincidence, I'm Zoe too," the woman smiled. "Just transferred from the Chicago branch 3 months ago." Zoe returned the smile, politely. But the other Zoe's eyes held something more, the look of someone who'd seen too much not to speak. I read your file when I joined. I thought the system had glitched. Georgetown degree, 6 languages, more than a dozen internal applications, not one callback? No one ever mentioned you. Not once. Even during our talent audit meetings. Zoe said nothing. She just nodded, slowly. So it wasn't a glitch? No, Zoe replied. It worked exactly as it was designed. That evening, in a small downtown cafe, the two Zoes met again. Williams opened her laptop. Screen shared a document, a spreadsheet of rejected applicants over the past 5 years. There's a pattern. Black and immigrant candidates were rejected at 3 times the rate of white applicants with equal or lesser qualifications. Here's the transfer path from recruitment desk, straight to Whitmore. Zoe stared at the screen like watching a crack run down a wall and pierce through her chest. Final approval? 98% Whitmore. A handful involved Richards. Williams opened another file, a contract database. White Light Communications sole vendor for all Summit translations for the last 3 years. Signed off by Whitmore. Company owner, Ashley Whitmore. Zoe didn't flinch. She knew the name. She accompanied Whitmore to a language panel last year. Introduced herself as his private associate. Per Summit, $50,000 to $80,000 for translation fees, Williams pointed out. No linguistic vetting. No certification on record. No degree verification. Zoe pulled out her phone. Opened her voice memo app. I've been recording all interactions this past week. Here's Whitmore saying, you might be skilled, but you don't fit the brand's identity. And talented people like you should learn to be more humble. Williams sat back, stunned. I don't think I've ever heard anything so cruel. Yet delivered with such perfect corporate grammar. 2 a.m. Williams hit send on an email to Coleman. Attachments. Discrimination pattern spreadsheet. White Light vendor contracts. Missing qualification, confirmations. Whitmore audio recording. She added just one line in the message body. Sir, I believe you were right to be suspicious. The system was never broken. It was programmed this way. The next morning, Coleman summoned Zoe. Not to reprimand her, but to warn her. I read everything Zoe Williams sent. We've opened an internal investigation. But before we go public, I need you to be careful. Zoe frowned. Why? Because when a system takes a hit to the heart, it doesn't collapse immediately. It reacts. It bites back. He handed her a new folder. These are the current translation contracts. You have full rights to edit. But I need the final version earlier than scheduled. Someone moved up the deadline. And I suspect it was a trap. Later that day, as Zoe worked on revisions, a Dutch gentleman entered the office and spotted her. Zoe Johnson? She nodded. The man lit up. I read your paper in the Journal of Applied Linguistics last year. Cross-cultural silence in East-West trade negotiations. I've cited it twice. Zoe blinked. 6 years into this hotel, and this was the first time someone recognized her for her mind. Thank you. Honestly, I thought no one read that paper but my professor. Oh, the Rotterdam Business Council read it. And today, it looks like we're meeting the author herself. That night, Zoe met with Williams one last time. We have the evidence, Williams said. Now it's just a matter of timing. Are you ready? Zoe glanced at her screen, where the file read, Master Translation File Version, approved by Zoe Johnson. She nodded. I'm ready, but don't call me a whistleblower. Call me the one who retranslated justice. Day 3 of the summit. Negotiations were at full tilt. Back-to-back bilateral meetings. Fast-paced diplomacy. As interim multilingual coordinator, Zoe had helped facilitate 6 preliminary contracts far beyond expectations. But something about the hotel's atmosphere had shifted. 9:45 a.m. As Zoe entered the event floor, she caught the whispers. Receptionists glancing at their phones. An internal message was circulating on the staff app. Zoe Johnson only has a bachelor's, not a PhD like people say. Source: Internal HR. She knew. The first real strike had landed. Zoe used to think that once the truth came out, the struggle would end. But when power feels threatened, it doesn't retreat quietly. It claws. It gossips. It tries to scatter the signal with noise. 10:15 a.m. She walked into the executive meeting room to present the final translation brief. But the projector was already on. A document was open labeled as a draft. A Mandarin version, with the exact same errors Whitmore had pushed in the original file. At the bottom, digital signature, Zoe Johnson. Timestamp, today, 9:32 a.m. The room went still. A finance manager whispered, "Is that the version she approved?" Zoe stepped forward, pulled out her personal USB, loaded the correct version timestamp from the previous day, signed by Coleman. "I didn't approve that draft," she said calmly. "This is the version I submitted yesterday. And this is an unauthorized edit falsely attributed to me at 9:32 a.m. At that time, I was in the lounge meeting Dutch delegates. Security footage can confirm it." Whitmore was seated in the back. He feigned surprise, like he'd just noticed the error. "Must be a system glitch? I'll have IT investigate immediately." Zoe looked directly at him. Not angry, just factual. The system doesn't accidentally overwrite files with revoked access. And it doesn't accidentally restore editing rights that were disabled yesterday. Noon. Zoe was summoned to legal. Waiting inside, not Zoe Williams, but a senior HR manager. Someone who clearly reported to Richards. "We're launching an inquiry into inconsistencies in your academic records. Some of your internal files lack certified proof of your PhD. Can you submit a notarized scan of your doctoral diploma?" Zoe placed a document on the table. Verified, stamped from Georgetown University. Doctor of Philosophy in Applied Linguistics. Graduated the 20th of June 20X, magna cum laude. "Would you like 6 copies or 9? The HR rep didn't answer. Just took notes. "We'll need to verify." Zoe walked out. She knew. The counterattack had officially begun. 3 p.m. A Chinese delegate stopped by the translation room. "Mr. Whitmore told us the materials might not be ready because the person in charge is under investigation. Is there a problem?" Zoe inhaled deeply. "No problem. Just someone deliberately trying to create one." She returned to her office. On screen, a new email. Subject: Final translation version. Master by A. Whitmore. Zoe wasn't surprised. She just sat down, opened her phone, and started recording her screen. She documented everything. Opened Whitmore's version. Compared it line by line to her own. Printed all emails with conflicting timestamps. Pulled up audio from a logistics meeting last week. In it, Whitmore's voice was clear. "I'll make sure her final draft never gets approved. If it comes from her." 6:30 p.m. Zoe entered Coleman's office unannounced. "I think you'll want to see this before the contracts get signed tomorrow morning." She laid down printouts of the manipulated documents, screenshots, and audio recordings. Coleman read silently. His eyes narrowed. "Are you absolutely certain?" "Without question. I have witnesses from the Chinese delegation. I have original versions, internal timestamps, and security video confirming where I was when the fake edits were made." Coleman stood. "They underestimated you." Zoe gave a quiet smile. "No, they sized me correctly. They just underestimated how long a system remembers when it wants to tell the truth." Day 4 of the summit. The morning began with a strange silence. The grand ballroom on the 6th floor, normally filled with cheerful greetings and corporate chatter, was unusually still. Every seat was filled, Senior leadership, international delegates, regional managers, and representatives from all Grand Plaza branches. On stage, a massive projection of the Grand Plaza logo. Next to it, a bare wooden podium and a solitary microphone. Backstage, Zoe stood holding a folder of documents. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't afraid. She was calm, like someone preparing to translate a brand new language. From injustice to clarity. 9 a.m. Richard Coleman stepped onto the stage. No opening music. No scripted pleasantries. Thank you for coming. Today, I don't speak just to you. I speak to a truth that's been buried for years. The screen behind him lit up. A graph appeared. Internal rejections by race and ethnicity. Then, a comparison of academic qualifications between accepted candidates and those rejected. At the bottom, the system wasn't broken. It was programmed this way. Not a single cough echoed. Only eyes shifting from screen to Coleman to Zoe Johnson as she stepped into view. Coleman continued. For 6 years, she worked here as a cleaning staff member. But her file, Georgetown honors graduate, fluent in 6 languages, 12 internal applications, was never properly reviewed. This week, she uncovered a translation failure that could have derailed this summit. She corrected it. She mediated. She saved us from a diplomatic disaster. Zoe stood beside Coleman, silent. The evidence was speaking louder than any speech. Next slide. Translation fees paid to White Light Communications over 3 years, $680,000. Verified credentials, none. Company owner, Ashley Whitmore, niece of Thomas Whitmore. Coleman's voice slowed. We uncovered a recruitment network that dismissed qualified talent based on names, skin color, or country of origin. We called it invisible bias. Today, we make it visible. He looked to the front row. There sat Whitmore, frozen, and Sarah Richards, trying to mask her discomfort. Thomas Whitmore terminated effective immediately. Sarah Richards suspended pending full investigation. A 5-year audit of all hiring decisions begins today. Every past decision will be re-evaluated by an independent, third-party review board. A few whispers fluttered through the crowd. Then applause. Quiet at first from the Chinese delegation. Then the Dutch. Then a few support staff stood. At the back of the room where the janitorial team watched remotely, someone began clapping with both hands and tears. Coleman turned to Zoe. Miss Johnson, or rather Dr. Zoe Johnson, on behalf of this company, I apologize for 6 years of silence. Today, I officially appoint you as our Global Director of Multilingual and Multicultural Communications. You will oversee language policy, international services, and internal talent development programs. Zoe stepped up to the podium. No speech in hand. Just a pause 3 seconds long. I'm not here to retell what I've endured. I'm here to say this. Talent doesn't live where you're born. It lives where you've been underestimated the longest. And when you make someone fluent in 6 languages scrub toilets, you don't just insult her. You burn down the future of your own organization. The entire auditorium rose. No one spoke, but everyone heard the same thing. Power had just changed hands. Zoe walked off stage. In her hand, her old badge, cleaning staff, kept as a memento. On her back, thunderous applause. In her pocket, a USB containing every email, recording, and contract. Not for revenge, but so no one could ever rewrite the truth. In the language of prejudice. Again, 6 months later, Grand Plaza, New York had changed. Not the kind of change where they hang up new slogans or hand out new uniforms, but a shift you could feel in the way people greeted each other, in the way no one's name got mispronounced anymore. Zoe walked through the grand lobby, past the front desk she used to scrub before dawn. Staff nodded to her, not out of fear of title, but because they finally saw her. On the 32nd floor, once reserved for real decisions, there was now a new nameplate. Dr. Zoe Johnson, VP of Diversity and International Relations. No glitter, no ceremony. But for the first time in the hotel chain's history, a former janitor was now shaping its global vision. Inside the boardroom, Zoe stood before 100 executives from across the region. On the screen behind her, Invisible Talents Initiative, Final Phase Report. In the past 6 months, we reviewed 1,268 entry-level employees. 147 had college degrees or higher. 83% were people of color, immigrants, or from underrepresented communities. Photos began to flash across the screen. A chef who once studied accounting in Bogota, a security guard who taught finance in the Philippines, a laundry technician who coded for a bank in New Delhi. Zoe continued. We reassigned 93 people, held 61 training sessions, reduced outsourcing costs by 42%. International guest satisfaction rose 38%. Coleman, seated in the front row, nodded slowly. Not because he led the project, but because Zoe did. What's the next step? He asked. Mandatory mentorship, Zoe replied. Every person promoted will train someone else who was once overlooked, the same way they once were. Not everyone was thrilled. At Grand Plaza, Los Angeles, Sarah Richards, once a commanding voice in the lobby, now managed laundry. Her salary was halved. She submitted weekly reports titled, Attitude Toward Ethical Retraining. That's how the system answers when power is misused. In Arizona, Thomas Whitmore worked night shifts at a roadside motel. His record now tarnished with allegations of discrimination and contract fraud. No one in the industry would even let him attend a conference, let alone manage again. Ashley, his niece, the one who'd once pocketed $80,000 in unverified translation contracts, was forced to return the funds. She also completed a professional ethics program. Now, she was studying Mandarin on a scholarship from the Inclusive Language Fund, created by Coleman, suggested by Zoe. But Zoe didn't follow their downfall. She didn't have to. Victory wasn't seeing your enemies fall. It was watching those who were once forgotten rise. One morning, Zoe passed by Linda, once a housekeeping colleague. Now, she was leading a tour for Japanese guests. Her new badge read, Cultural Ambassador. Zoe walked into a new leadership training workshop. One voice stood out. They used to say I wasn't qualified. Now they're asking me to revise their contracts. It was Layla, a former freelance interpreter, now a participant in the Leadership Accelerator. They told me I spoke too many languages, Layla added, laughing. Said a confused client. They told me I sounded too harsh, said another trainee, because I wasn't afraid to push back. Zoe didn't laugh. She just nodded. They're used to the right to hear what's comfortable. It's time they get used to hearing what's correct. That afternoon, Zoe returned to her desk. On it, an envelope from the Netherlands. Inside, an invitation to guest lecture at the University of Applied Linguistics, Amsterdam. Signed, Professor Van Houten. I've followed your journey, he wrote. Your linguistic resilience confirms what I've always believed. If the world won't listen to your language, make it learn yours. Zoe stood, looked out the window of her 32nd floor office. The city below bustled, same as the day she started mopping lobby floors. But everything now felt moved. She picked up the phone, called her mother. Her voice trembled. I didn't just do it, Mom. I did it for you. For people like you, who had degrees, but no one ever asked. I did it so people mopping the floor right now. No, they're not invisible. That evening, Zoe officially launched Phase 2 of the initiative. The 7th language. The right to be seen. A campaign empowering employees to express their identities, not just through words, but through action, culture, and their own stories. The final shot. Zoe stands at the podium in the new Global Leadership Summit. Soft light catches her badge. Dr. Zoe Johnson, VP of Diversity and International Relations. She looks straight into the lens, broadcasting live to hundreds of employees across the world. No more translations needed. Just one truth left to say. When I was little, my mother worked as a hotel maid in a place just like Grand Plaza. She had a college degree, but no one ever asked. She paused, not for drama, but because for the first time, she allowed herself to say what hurt. She once told me, "Zoe, they may not see you, but don't ever let them make you forget you're here." Zoe took a breath. Her voice didn't shake, but it was human. Today, she doesn't just see me being seen. She sees hundreds who were once invisible, stepping into the light beside me. She looked into the camera. Justice isn't just firing the wrong people. Justice is rebuilding the system until mistakes have nowhere left to hide. Where talent isn't buried under uniforms or hard-to-pronounce names. The sweetest victory isn't watching your opponents fall. It's seeing people like us finally rise and walk through the door that our mothers thought would always stay shut. Because true greatness isn't breaking through the wall alone. It's making sure that door stays open for everyone who comes next. If this story made you pause and reflect, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, so those who are seen as invisible know they are not alone. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us for more true stories about resilience, justice, and the quiet power of rising. Wherever you are today, may something finally see you. And may the right door open just when you thought it never would.